Good morning, students, staff, friends, and family, honored guests of Hellings Elementary School. It is a privilege to be here at your Remembrance Day Assembly. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Chris Lloyd. I'm a petty officer in the Royal Canadian Navy Reserve. I live here in Delta. I have sons in grades 2 and 4 at another elementary school just down the road. Normally, I'm out driving boats for the Navy, but today I'm honored to have the opportunity to talk to you about our veterans and how their sacrifices have made possible the freedom and peace that we enjoy in Canada. Their stories inspire those of us who wear the uniform today, and it's important that we all continue to share the stories about how courageous and selfless our veterans have been. That's the best way to show our gratitude and contribute to the important work of passing their legacy on. This year, we have a couple of milestone anniversaries to commemorate. So my stories are going to be about Canadians who have made our country and the world a better place during different times in our history. First, I want to tell you about the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Has anybody here heard of D-Day before? So you might know that D-Day was a very important victory. It was won during the Second World War, when Canadians and other democracies were fighting against Europe, against Nazi Germany. Of course, the people who were fighting at the time, people like Arnie England, didn't know if they would win the battle or not. Arnie was from Tubastenac, a small town in New Brunswick. Can you imagine what it was like for him? In the early morning darkness of D-Day, at just 21 years of age, he was crossing the English Channel into France. He was one of the 14,000 Canadians that were part of the massive surprise Allied amphibious assault. In addition to the Canadians, there were American and British troops as well. The mission that day was for each of those three groups to take back a sector of France's Normandy coastline from the enemy. The Canadians were headed for a beach called Juno, which was defended by landmines, barbed wire, artillery, machine guns, and thousands of enemy soldiers. The sky screamed with shells and warplanes. Many of the soldiers were seasick from the high waves from crossing the English Channel, and many of them had to wade onto the beach with water up to their neck while they held their rifle over their head to keep it dry. All of them kept going, even though some of their friends lay dead beside them on the beach and in the water. 359 Canadians died that day. But this was the beginning of the end of the Second World War, and because the Canadians and the Allies were able to push the Germans back off the beach. Over the next few months, Arnie and the other Allies kept pushing inland until France's entire region of Normandy was liberated. They faced many grueling battles, and although Arnie survived, over 5,000 Canadians were killed and 13,000 were injured. The liberated countries of northwestern Europe still honor the Canadians who helped them. By the time the Second World War ended, over 1 million Canadians had served in the armed forces. But even those 1 million Canadians were supported by millions of others. Canadians like yourselves helped too. Since many of the men and women were fighting overseas, there was no way to harvest crops at home for food without additional help. Students filled the gap to keep up the food supply. Schools like this didn't take attendance in the fall, since so many kids and teens were working hard, long hours on the farms during harvest time. Because supplies were scarce, young children also collected tons of scrap that could be reused for the war effort. They often used their money, their allowance money, that they earned from jobs to buy war saving stamps. They also contributed millions of dollars to the war effort. These sorts of actions by young people were admired in Canadian society and made a real positive difference. We must be grateful that so many Canadians worked together to help bring the peace. Since the end of the Second World War, Canada has been working with our allies to protect our common beliefs and maintain peace around the world. Today, Canadians like Commodore Josie Kurtz from Joliet, Quebec are patrolling the Black Sea on board frigates like the HMCS Toronto to help keep Central and Eastern Europe safe. This summer, Commodore Kurtz became the first woman to command an Allied fleet of warships. Hopefully, your generation will also include leaders like Commodore Kurtz. The other important anniversary we are commemorating this year stems from the September 11th, 2001 attacks in the United States. After those attacks, Canada sent soldiers to a country called Afghanistan to help bring peace to that country. It was the biggest deployment of Canadian troops since the Second World War, ending just 5 years ago. Captain Nicola Goddard was one of the 40,000 Canadians who went to serve on that mission. Could you imagine the courage it takes to ride on top of the topmost position of an armored vehicle to spot the enemy targets? That's what a forward observation officer does, and it's one of the most dangerous jobs in the Army. And that was Captain Goddard's job. During an ambush on her convoy, Captain Goddard called for artillery support to help fight the enemy, and in doing so, she was at great risk. Sadly, during that ambush, she was killed by enemy fire. Again in Afghanistan, our troops like Captain Goddard performed their duties with exceptional bravery. In our acts of remembrance this year, many Canadian Armed Forces members, like myself, and many of the family and friends of our military personnel and veterans who served in Afghanistan will be thinking about that mission on Remembrance Day. The Canadian Armed Forces lost 158 service personnel in the war in Afghanistan and related operations. We also lost 7 Canadian civilians and 40 American soldiers who were serving under the Canadian command. Every year, military personnel stand with tens of thousands of other Canadians at the National War Memorial in Ottawa to remember these and all of our veterans during our annual National Remembrance Day ceremonies. Many Canadians participate in the Right to the Troops program to thank our veterans for their service and operations abroad or assistance at home during disasters like floods and wildfires. Many Canadians visit war monuments and museums across the country and across the globe to lay a wreath or have a personal moment of silence. There are many ways to remember the sacrifices of our veterans and to help keep their legacy alive. What really matters is we make the choice to remember and that we never forget. Thank you for choosing to remember our veterans with me today.